quickly here's.
It's now 7 p.m., Tuesday, April 16th, 2019. I'd like to call the Selectmen's meeting to order. Would everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next would be public forum, limited to 5 minutes per topic. Discussion or comments about town employees or agency members shall be avoided so as not to violate individuals' rights. Is anyone here for public forum? The next would be the Board of Selectmen minutes from April 2nd, 2019.
Mr. Chairman, I move to accept the Board of Selectmen minutes from April 2nd, 2019 as presented.
I'll second that.
The motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next, we have a proclamation on Arbor Day. Wendy, would you like to read that, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you so much. Arbor Day Proclamation. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to the Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can reduce the erosion of our precious topsoil by wind and water, cut heating and cooling costs, moderate the temperature, clean the air, produce oxygen, and provide habitat for wildlife. And whereas trees are a renewable resource giving us paper, wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood products. And whereas trees in our city increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, and beautify our community. And whereas trees, wherever they are planted, are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. Now, therefore, I, John Hebert, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Sutton, Massachusetts, Tree City, USA, do hereby proclaim April 26, 2019 as Arbor Day.
Thank you. And the date for that, Jim, is April 22nd?
26, actually, it's a
26,
Friday,
And I believe it's around 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
And it'll be on the Sutton site posted.
Yeah,
sometime.
I'll let the board know where it's going to be.
Thank you. Next on the agenda would be on-site engineering sewer presentation. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've got a couple of representatives from on-site to do a presentation. This project has been going on for a number of years. You may recall we had a feasibility group put together that Ken Smith and Don Obahowski and a number of other, Jen Hager and others participated on to look at the feasibility of this. Last year we had WPI study this. We had a great student and a professor involved, and this last fall we had a warrant article to appropriate funds to have the study from the villas up to the center of town. So it's been a number of years in the making, but On-Site is here tonight to present their findings, and it's Article 18 on the May town meeting warrant, which authorizes the construction of this project up to the center of town. So, On-Site. You want to introduce
Would you,
yourself?
just introduce yourself, please, and then we'll proceed after.
Yep.
So,
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chairman, I'm David Formato, President of On-Site Engineering, and with me is Ray Willis, our project manager. Thank you for having us tonight. We came to just kind of give your group an update on the work we've been doing on behalf of the town, and to kind of talk a little bit about the process and where we're at, and bring everybody up to speed. So with that, we'll get into our presentation.
Can we?
Oh. Yeah, that could we, put the projector on. There it goes. So just is a, you know, if there's something that we're covering that there's a question on, I mean, I think this definitely works better interactive, so please feel free to, you know, just stop us and you know, we can, you know, address that as we go, if that's okay with the group. So again, I'm David Fumato. I'm, for this project, your client liaison project officer. I've been working primarily with Don Obahowski as the town's primary contact person. Again, with me is Ray Willis, who is our project manager, lead designer. He's been doing the bulk of the technical work on this project. So just a little bit about us. You know, On-Site Engineering was founded in 2006. Our mantra is we provide cost-conscious, you know, specialized wastewater and water supply engineering services to our clients. We are very focused on providing high quality, but also developing client relationships. And I think that hopefully in the flavor that you guys are getting from your town employees is that we've been working very collaboratively with them and trying to make this a successful project for the town. We were selected for this project by the Sewer Commission as part of an RFP process. So, you know, we provided a technical proposal, but also qualifications. We did come in to meet with the commission and provide a presentation about who we are and our vision for what we were going to provide for engineering services. So it was you know, a rigorous process that we welcomed and thought was very well done. So, you know, a little bit about you know, the history of this project. We started by meeting with the sewer department personnel and members of the sewer commission to really look at not just what the town was looking to accomplish, but also the different means and methods to which that could be done. We started by taking the WPI study that Mr. Smith had mentioned and really looked at that in a lot of detail because there was a lot of good information there. So we'd use that as the basis of our, not only our proposal and scope of work, but also as kind of the framework for where we could start. Using that information, we did an inventory using your GIS system to really understand you know, what properties were in and around the center of town that may or may not be, you know, possible to be connected to the sewer. We took that information and met with the town manager as well as Don and sewer commission members to really kind of develop a scope based upon, you know, what we found in that initial step. So it's important to understand this is a very collaborative process. We just didn't take our data, you know, go home, come back with a design a few months later and say, here it is. We had 2 working sessions, the initial one to kind of lay the framework, and then we did some preliminary layouts and design work. We had another working session to kind of hone that in. And then the third meeting we had, we actually prepared a presentation for the sewer commission where it was, you know, we met with them during their public meeting. We presented some options, took additional feedback from the commissioners, which then ultimately resulted in the layout and design that you know, is being used to present tonight, but also to be possibly funded for construction at town meeting. So again, it was a very collaborative process. We've been working on this since essentially October-ish. So, you know, we've been going back and forth. One other note that's not on there, but we did also reach out to Conservation Commission. We've been talking with them about what this project may or may not mean relative to wetlands impacts and, you know, the permitting associated with that. So we've been working you know, within town on a bunch of different fronts to try and make sure that once we get to design, we really have a project that everyone feels like is something that is going to be good value.
Excuse me, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Just one sec. Were there any specific concerns that the Conservation Commission addressed?
No, so far it's been very collaborative. We talked to them. We did do borings, as most of you probably well know. And during that process, their concerns were mainly about just the temporary protections. But you know, the general sense is that because this is going to be essentially a pipeline project, mostly within roadways, it's going to be more on the temporary disturbance type side. So we feel like that it's something that should be fairly straightforward to work with them to come up with, you know, the mitigation that's necessary to really make sure that this thing goes forward in a proper manner.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the selected option that we looked at after our meetings with the town, looking at the service area. This slide gives a summary of what the collection system will look like. I'm gonna go into that in a little more detail slide by slide. But essentially, looking at a gravity collection system along Uxbridge Road from the town hall to the intersection of Boston Road. Another segment of gravity collection from the intersection of Cole Ave and Singletary Ave, as well as from Boston Road to Cole Ave. In addition to that, there'd be a section of gravity sewer from approximately 298 Boston Road to the intersection of Singletary Ave. All these flows would be directed to a pump station, which would be located on a town-owned parcel, which is 7 Singletary Ave. And based on this layout, our opinion of probable cost is $3.153 million.
Does that cost include road repair?
Yes. So just to go street by street, this is Uxbridge Road, so this is the town hall right here. So right at the intersection of, believe this is Church Circle?
Church Circuit.
Church Circle down to the intersection of Boston Road. That's the segment serving the town hall. Singletary Ave, we have a segment from the intersection of Cole Ave, including Cole Ave, heading down Singletary Ave. From Boston Post Road to Singletary Ave, we have another gravity collection segment which goes to 7 Singletary Ave, flow going in this direction from left to right. This is the continuation from the previous slide, gravity collection going right to left to the pump station. And the other thing I wanted to point out right here is we added a provision for a future connection to service the schools. In addition to that, all of the gravity sewer collection system, as well as the pump station, has been sized to accommodate a future flow from the school. I'm just gonna go back here, heading from actually, let me go this slide, sorry, jumping ahead of myself. So from Boston Post Road, right around 298, coming back this way, from right to left, back to the center of Boston, intersection of Uxbridge Road and Boston Road, heading back down to the pump station. That's all gravity collection. Going back to this slide, once the flows are collected at the pump station, there would be a force main going down Singletary Ave to the intersection of Boston Road, and then following Boston Road, the entire length to hit the intersection of Clubhouse Way. And that is where the existing gravity collection system is. It's roughly 6,300 feet from the intersection of Boston Road and Uxbridge Road down to Clubhouse Way.
Now, you're gonna be able to get that whole length of Boston Road from a single pump? Because I remember when we had the WPI survey, that they were talking about the possibility of putting a secondary pump somewhere down Boston Road at one of the hills. Is that not gonna be necessary based on this design?
Based on this design, we have a force main going down Boston Road, so it's not really set up to have other connections after after Boston Post, after 292 Boston Road.
So I think that also if you take a look at the relative elevations, essentially because we're up at the top of the hill, the force main is actually going to be a combination of, at some points it's actually going to be flowing by gravity, so that even though you have those up and downs, there's those intermediate hills, the net difference in elevation, you never actually get it back above your starting point. So that will flow, from the top, from the center of town all the way down. We're going to have to make sure that we factor in cleanouts and air release manholes at strategic locations to allow for that force main to fill and empty. But yeah, there is no need to pick it up and pump again to get over any of those secondary hills.
Good, because like I said, when we had that presentation, there was a concern about location of a potential second pump, so
Yep.
it's nice to hear that that concern has been eliminated.
Yep.
Thank you.
I think one of the things about that too that's important is that, the WPI stuff was great and it was done based on your GIS data. We did a full survey So we have much more accurate data about those relative elevations as well as the features of the road, which really allowed us to hone in on and answer that question in good detail.
Perfect. I would hope so.
Right.
Thank you.
I just have a question in
Yes.
regards to, you said at some point on Boston Road there'll be no more connections. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so the extent of the sewer on top of the hill is essentially how far could we move away from the center of town, essentially the intersection, and still come back by gravity. So really what's limiting is the elevation of all those pipes at the center of town without getting so deep that you're running into ledge, groundwater problems, and really increasing construction costs. So we, based on the technical information we had, we set those elevations and then just went backwards and said, from this point, we can get to gravity. So it was just really about how far could we go before we really couldn't get flow anymore.
Yeah, it's not coming out too clear, but this is existing grade shown on the profile. Right around this point, Station 7, which is 292 Boston Road, you can see where the grade starts really dropping off at that point, so.
So at Station 7, that's about 700
100
feet.
excuse me, 700 feet down the road.
So alternatively, if we were in the future, and I know you can't necessarily address
Dave
the
and
future
Dee's.
specifically, but if we were to connect to the schools, now you have an incline. So would there need to be another pump house located at the school complex?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, so that assumes, basically, looking at the topography on, is that Boston Road heading in that
Yes.
direction?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, you start losing elevation, or the elevation starts to go from high to the east, low to the west.
So,
So that whole road, it starts to go down, and then it comes to a low spot, probably about 300 feet from the school, and then starts going back up. So in the future, you could either put a pump station at the school, or depending on what the goals were, if you wanted to tie in more people, there is a lower spot along that road. It would be private property to house up. There is private property there to house the pump station, but, if you want to go that route.
And again, I don't want to necessarily get too far ahead of ourselves, but would that addition impact the flow to the extent as it's going to be designed with Phase 1?
Nope.
And this will allow people to tie in to the force main going down to the villas after 292 Boston Road. We've got Wainwright, we've got roads along that route down.
So this is currently set up, and this is, again, getting back to iterative process, talking with the sewer commission, it's currently set up as a conventional force main. It doesn't envision that you would provide sewer along that route. So that's certainly, and that's not factored into this cost. I mean, that's something that, could be looked at being done in the future, but it really was,
So all the houses along Boston Road, from 292 down to the villas, what are we gonna do with them?
yeah, so I mean, if
They
that's,
can get grinder pipes, but can they tie into the pressure line?
so for this system, we would, if you're looking to do that, we would recommend adding a secondary force main to that trench to allow them to connect into that, so that you don't impact the function of the gravity sewer. And that's certainly something that is really a cost driver. It's really a decision that needs to be made relative to, is this something that we want to look to do? But it's really about preference at this point. For us, it's easily done. We just need to really get a sense for what is the goals and wishes of the town. So
So let me make sure I understand. So you're saying basically from 292 Boston Road, which is whereabouts? Is that like Largis's or?
It's 298, I think, Bobby's farm.
298, yeah.
So is it Dave and Dee's, Caraciotis?
It's right there, I
Yeah.
mean,
Yes. From that point downward all the way to Clubhouse Way, there'd be no houses that could connect along that route. Is that what I'm
that's
understanding?
right. As of right now, that's not factored into this.
And then, to go back to Jim's question, no ability to tie in Sibley or Armsbury or in the future?
Wainwright,
Uh,
How about
Right.
going down Singletary?
I'm sorry?
How about
heading down Singletaries or anything there that?
Yeah, when you get past the top of Singletary at that point, it's also, you would have to pump up because it's going down the hill again, so we stopped it there because it's not, so. And again, it's really about, certainly open to feedback and direction on this. And we've looked at a bunch of different options. We presented a bunch of different cost points and scenarios to the sewer commission. So, there's information that's available on different ways this can be done and that type of thing. So, this isn't something that's set in stone.
But the way
Sure.
this is designed right now,
Mhm.
is it fair to say the primary customer of this project is really right here at the center, so the town hall?
Yes, right, it's town hall and allowing for capacity for future school connection, and then the extent that gravity can be achieved in and around town center, correct? Yep.
Okay.
Just one thing I want to mention too, I know that's kind of hard to read. We did provide these design drawings in PDF form. I hope that everyone had a chance.
Yeah, we
So,
got
but
the digital.
I don't know if it's been put on the town's website, but that may be something for, if people want to see them. Obviously, you can get a much better view than looking at it on the screen on TV, so.
Oh, sure. Just elaborate a little bit, please, on this low pressure that we're speaking about here right now. Down in the Manchog area, we have grinder pumps that tie into the force main. I think what happened, there's a little communication factor here between us and onsite. Grinder pumps can tie into low pressure sewer mains. We did talk about Wainwright, about extending the line out there. I think we need to focus on, we need to focus more on the TDH, that's the total dynamic head of the pump station. You can modify that with your design of your pumps. Is that correct, Dave? We can.
Yeah, no, there's
Yeah,
certainly different
definitely.
ways to do
Yeah,
this.
and there are, and that is a preference for the sewer commissioners. We don't want this just isolated just for the center. We want everybody beyond that point to be able to tie into the sewers. And we're talking about Wainwright and everybody right down from the center, right down to Pleasant Valley. So that's something that needs to be discussed. It can be addressed and it will be addressed by the commissioners. And that's something that we'll sit down with onsite and review the design of the pumps. And, depending of how big are the pumps, that's a major factor. But as the force main goes down Boston Road, you have less pressure there. And we do have grinder pumps that can tie in to a force main. So that's something that needs to be addressed internally, with onsite on the design of the pumps from the pump station itself.
Dawn, if I may, do you think there would be enough time to be able to do that? Because if we're gonna be putting this before town meeting and we have a hard number that the voters are gonna vote on,
Right.
and if the costs could exceed that, we may run into issues.
No, Jesse, you're absolutely right. I mean, but it ain't more of a cost factor. It's more of how big are your pumps are gonna be at 7 Singletary Ave. That's a determined factor. That's something internal that we could sit down and address with onsite. And that it's not gonna impact the cost of this project. Is that safe to say, Dave?
Yeah, and I think that we want to just be cautious and understand that, what you can't have is that there's a balancing act between current flow, future flow, and running all those iterative calculations. You really need to understand at what point do you create a problem and what that problem might be. So that's part of the complex nature of it. The other side of the coin is that if this is something that has to happen, and it doesn't really look like or it's not something that you can get a lot of connections to without possibly causing problems, maybe there's the ability to add that second pipe so you have a dedicated force main for grinder pumps down the road. We can certainly look at the costs on that. We actually did a little bit of work on that already, so we can look at that and update that. So I think that that's probably a good backstop to use, with the intent, hopefully, as Don said, that, everything, when you go through the actual design analysis on that pump station, it works out and that pipe's not needed. But I think it's probably important to maybe have that backstop information, and that's pretty readily available, because we did already do some low-pressure, small diameter force main cost analysis as part of our design process.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that, but I'm thinking to myself that if I was one of the residents that were on the stretch and saw the sewage going in and not having the ability to tie in, at least for me, my concern would be problematic.
Agreed.
So, you know, hopefully that the concerns of potential residents who want to tie in could be looked at and added to this before, you know, we get to crunch time, so to speak.
I think one of my concerns is that at this is not late in the game, but at this point when we're going to ask for money,
Mhm.
there just seems to be some ambiguity and confusion as to like what the plan is, and I'm pretty concerned about that. Like I would think by now we'd have a pretty good idea what's included with this, and I'm not really sensing that from what I'm hearing right now. I'm pretty concerned about that.
It's not an invalid point, and, you know, I will, like I said, we did work pretty extensively with, you know, Don, the sewer commission, to present a bunch of different options and a bunch of different costs, so, you know, I do think that the information is there, it just needs to be, you know, honed in and, you know, revised slightly, but, you know, it's not something that is a complete unknown to us, I guess, so. But
I
well, point
think
taken.
If I can, I think the complete unknown is, what is the cost impact to add that second line?
Right,
And that's what I think your taxpayers are going to want to know before town meeting. So if it's readily available, how does that translate? What is readily available?
oh, yeah, I mean, we probably can have something next week, yes.
You know, I hate to have this discussion here at the board meeting when we're signing the warrant tonight.
Yeah.
That's my concern, you know, this is,
Sure.
Go on up to the mic.
What we did as a
Just
board,
introduce yourself.
oh, Larry Weissman, Sewer Commission. What we did as a board is we looked at the problems that we're having in the center of town right now, and a potential problem about a half mile down the street that we're probably gonna have in the next few years. We could extend this sewer out, I'd love to have it down my house too, I'm probably only 5 miles away, I mean, why not design it for all the way down there too, but we looked at this, we have a certain amount of money we're hoping to work with, we're trying to get the most out of it that we can, and as a commission, we looked at this area, we know there's certain problems around here, and that's what we were trying to address. I mean, I would love to run it all over town, I think sewer is a great thing, but with Sutton, with the rolling hills, it's kinda hard to do, so I don't want everybody to think that the sewer commission dropped the ball, I just feel we looked at what we could do with what we had, and that's what we wanted to work on, so.
I mean, from my standpoint, I understand that there's limited.
I know what you're saying, I would
Yeah.
feel the same way.
I think more of my concern is not so much extending it beyond to where it's the
Yeah.
reach of what you've done. I think it makes sense and I understand that. What I'm concerned about is the perception if we're going by people's homes.
Right,
I would think that they would be able to connect in. That's the surprise for me. I think the scale of the size of this is appropriate based on what we're trying to do. I think it's just a surprise to myself and it seems like to others as well,
yeah.
that we would make an assumption that if the sewer's going by, that a house could tie into it. So that's really just where my concern is. And then what is the additional cost to get to that point? And the fact that we're at this point of having to sign the warrant articles tonight puts us in a bind.
Yeah, Carl?
Carl Capoli, Commissioners. It's my understanding that you could connect into a low pressure line, right? The problem is somebody has to get a grinder from their house to that point. It's a matter of their cost, or either put it into the program, and if you're gonna give them the opportunity,
Right.
you gotta also give them the grinders. And that's a no. But you can still do it.
Yeah, so
Another point is, you can take a survey and find out how many people wanna connect. And personally, I was on that early committee to look at to look at this. And a survey was sent out. It was 44 questions, and 11 people answered. And they said, why don't we do it on 146? So there's really no feel for whether they, you know, if you look at the type of the houses on South Boston Road, the new houses that was built in the last 10 years, well, they got systems that work. So it's not a point of you can't get sewage, but you gotta pay for it.
But David, I wanted to just listen to you, if your concern is, if you take the totality of the potential connections, plus a potential future expansion, it sounds like you're worried about whether there's really enough capacity to handle all that. Maybe you just haven't done this enough analysis to know that, is that?
Yeah, I think that the trick is balancing the, as Don said, the head requirements of the pump up at 7 Singletary, and not possibly overwhelming it at some point in the future. Because, you know, we're also concerned about flow rate in the pipe, how long it takes for the sewage to come from the center of town all the way down. These are all factors into the design that as engineers we really need to be concerned about. And to start, if you start accommodating a lot of flow in that way, it changes the dynamic. So because there was so much unknown, like Carl said, there doesn't really seem to be didn't seem to be a whole lot of appetite for any of this. And there's large properties out there that are open and vacant. You know, what do you do with those? Do you assign a lot of flow, no flow, a single family home flow? So that was kind of the genesis of if you want to plan for the future, maybe it makes sense to add that second pipe because it gives you the ability to do that without impacting the current. And that's kind of the thought process in terms of that being a solid technical backstop. Because again, as an engineer, our concern is that you engineer this constructed, and then as people don't tie in, it takes days for that sewage flow from the center of town to make it down there because everything is just so big, right? So those are the type of things that we're wrestling with this, and it's not cut and dry because there's just so many unknowns. So.
Does this system as designed have the capacity to handle, because I know John has mentioned a couple of times about the possibility of at the McGovern parcel of there being a senior development. Would that be too much? Would that overwhelm the system, or?
Is that the town property behind us?
That's, no, that's down, it's a parcel that's back over Singletary and Boston Road in the back.
Along the power lines.
Yeah, near the power lines.
Okay. Yeah, so anything that would tie into the 7 Singletary pump station is, we can accommodate that. It's when you start
So
adding.
because it's at the elevation
Yes,
point,
you
okay.
know all that. So it's when you start adding flow to the force main post that pump station, that's when you need to worry about, you know, do you start sending flow in the other direction? Or, you know, do you actually create a situation where flow coming into the pipe at the same time creates a backup, that type
So
of
it goes
stuff,
into
right?
people's
So,
house, okay.
you know, so it gets technical, it gets pretty complicated fairly quickly.
And
so.
that could be alternatively offset by a secondary pipe being, like,
Right, so that
at an additional cost.
agreed, right, if you put that second pipe in that's dedicated just to low pressure grinder pumps as people wanna put them in, you size that pipe according to all these additional connections, and that eliminates that problem.
Does that require any pumping?
The pump is supplied by, so every individual connection has its own pump at the spot, at their source. So they provide the push as they go.
So collaboratively.
Yes, exactly, right. Which you would need in either situation, even if you tied it into the proposed force main we're talking about that's going down the hill right now. You know, the engineering concern is that you don't create the problem where you have a conventional pump system trying to fight against all these little pumps that are coming on at the same time, so.
Mr. Chairman, can I just step in? Thank you. Right from the start of this whole project, the town administrator has indicated, along with the sewer commissioners, that we're gonna try to get as many people hooked up on the system as we possibly could. And that was the intent right from the start of this whole design. The sewer commission is very adamant about it, the town administrator is very adamant about it, about extending these lines, like as far as at the intersection of Wainwright and any other pre-existing dwellings, if they were interested in tying to the sewer. That's still our goal, and we're not gonna be downplaying it. All we need to do is to sit down adjust the, size of the pump station, the size of the pumps at the pump station, and then all of our grinder pumps that we have, that people tying to force right now, has two check valves. There's one at the tank and there's one at the property line. There's nothing that could happen to any homeowners in regards to that without having both check valves faulting. 2006, all of Huff Road, through all the grinder pumps. Minimum on problems that we've got. Really the problem is the homeowners themselves, discharging baby wipes and things like that in there. The grinder pumps are very reliable. They can pump 2 miles. That's what we have down in Manchog. You know, and then I feel very confident in the grinder pumps. And I feel very confident these grinder pumps can adapt to the system that we have here. That's what I'll put my 40 years experience in municipal government, that these grinder pumps will suffice in regards to this force main. I mean, what we're talking about here right now is that eventually, I think, the commissioner was talking, there's the potential of 130 people that could tie into the system. And that was that was our goal right from the start. And we're not being, this purpose of this sewers coming up is an environmental issue. And it's more for the school's options. It's a very important that people give it strong consideration in regards to approving this article. This article here right now is gonna give the school some options, which they don't have. They got a deteriorating sewer treatment facility down there. That's your only option right now, is to keep soaking taxpayers' money into it. And then this here, you can bypass all that. You can bypass the DEP permitting. You can bypass your staffing up there, your operation and maintenance level. You can just pump it from point A to point B. And all your permits and all your staffing, at cost of over $200,000 it's costing the school right now. So to sit back and start having some dialogue on these grinder pumps, they can adapt to this 4-inch line that's going down there. We have it. It's working. It's working down in Manchog. We have grinder pumps in Wilkinsonville. No issues whatsoever. And again, I'm just a little drawn back, and I'm sure Mr. Smith is too, because we had a very lengthy conversation on this along with the commissioners of how important it is to get as many people hooked up on this system as we possibly can. And that's our goal and objective, and we'll stand by it.
And I'd just like to say, I mean, Don's not wrong. What I'm saying is that we haven't crunched all those numbers yet. It most likely is something that can be done. We just haven't been directed to look at that yet. Our directive was more about getting this stuff, as much gravity as we could, to a pump station and then getting it up to Clubhouse Way. So, I do want to agree that, this is, from a technical perspective, it should be doable. But we can't sit here in front of you today and say, yes, we've analyzed that, and it's all done, signed, sealed, delivered, and designed. That wouldn't be fair to say to the group.
So,
Go ahead, there's someone after us. Go ahead and speak. Who wants to speak on our board here first? Someone just had a little question?
yeah, I was just gonna say, I mean, to sum up what I'm hearing so far is, I'm in Don's camp. The idea that we have an environmental problem facing us, and that ultimately the extension from the center of town to the schools is really the right solution in the long run to resolve that, and it's the reason I want to support this project as we go forward. But my concern is, I'm just not clear whether we think this second pipe is going to be necessary or not necessary, which means to me that, and I'm concerned that the cost number that we're looking at isn't determined at this point.
If we're gonna go forward with this project at the Maytown meeting with the 3.1 million and change, and then it's decided by the designers that another pipe is needed, that's an additional cost above and beyond the 3.1 that the town meeting has appropriated.
I think we should postpone it, and I don't think we should go forward right now until we get all the correct answers that we all need on everything, because it seems to me, I hate to say it, but in some ways, not to put the blame on anybody, but I think there's more homework to be done on the whole thing, because it's not fair to the taxpayers.
Yeah, it was, I'm sort of dumbfounded a little bit. You know, my expectation was all people along the route could tie in. I wasn't aware of a second pipe that might be needed. The problem is, if you don't sign the warrant tonight, or don't, you exclude this article from the warrant, or you decide to pass over it, then it comes up at the fall town meeting. You know, because ultimately, if we don't sign it tonight, and without a special Board of Selectmen's meeting prior to town meeting, the next meeting is May 7th? 6th or 7th, which is too close to town meeting. Town meeting's on the 13th, so,
Can I ask a question? Do you think we can get clarity on this issue between then and now?
So, Ray, go ahead.
If you give me a couple seconds.
So we
what-
have done a bunch of costing on this, so we have some numbers we can certainly share with the board tonight on a second pipe option.
So I think what's obvious to everybody is if you need a second pipe, doing the second pipe while you got it open to do the first pipe is the only thing that really makes sense. But, you know, as I sit here, I guess my question, even if you can give us a cost tonight, is whether we really need that cost. You know, I think that's the question that still needs to be answered.
Agreed. But I think that probably, you know, for the group, it sounds like that understanding the total possible costs is critically important, obviously, for town meeting, and that, you know, then if that turns out that is not necessary from a technical perspective, you know, then that money was budgeted, but it didn't need to be spent. Is that, you know, fair? I mean, I understand you're trying to, you know, you're obviously trying to, you know, not over appropriate anything. That's a given.
Personally, I'd rather over appropriate and be able to roll money back.
Agreed.
If that was, you know, before us, then have to go back after the fact and say, we just didn't quite meet expectations.
So we did present to the sewer commission a bunch of options, and in one of them, we did actually have an adder for low-pressure sewer line along the force main route of $500,000. So if you add the, you know, it's 3.153 was the additional, so if you add that $500,000, it's 3.65. So that would be the appropriate number probably to carry at town meeting, because it gives that backstop.
And what would, I'm sorry, what would transpire between then and now to provide some clarity around whether or not that would be necessary?
Then and now in terms of town meeting, or
leading up to
Or
town
between
meeting?
tonight and when you can make that final determination.
yeah, I mean, we could, yeah, I mean, you know, the next couple of weeks, we can certainly delve into the technical aspects of that and determine if that second pipe is necessary or not necessary. When is town meeting? I'm sorry, I apologize.
May 13th.
May 13th.
Monday night, yeah.
Yeah, certainly before then, you know, we can have, you know, definitive information to the sewer commission on that.
You know, my concern, I'm sorry.
No, go
is
ahead.
that, you know, we're trying to win passage of this article.
Agreed.
And I think there's a couple of elements, I think as has already been stated around the table, is people that live along that route that sort of feel today like, or probably have felt up till now, that they would be able to connect. To learn that they might not be able to connect would be a really big concern. And, you know, and in any case, the number itself is, you know, not an insignificant number that people are gonna have to decide to raise their taxes to pay for. So, I think to be as clear and settled on these issues as we can be is the right thing to do for the voters.
Mr. Chairman, may I also? I think a real practical issue as well. I appreciate everything that the sewer commission has done, but my concern is we put in the system as proposed. There is a history in this town of displeasure with the quality of the roads. And if we have to go back and rip up Boston Road again, there won't be a single person that drives that road that is going to be happy whether they're living on that road or not. So I think it's just critical to ascertain the necessity of a second pipe.
Agreed.
before, you know, we ask them to pay 3.1 or $3.6 million.
Yeah, we will hone that and get that information out, disseminated as quickly as possible in the next couple of weeks for sure. You'll have it forthwith, because it is critical that you understand.
May I ask another question as
Yeah,
well?
1 minute, yeah, go ahead, John.
I think another concern that I have as well is, I know there's constraints and gravity flow issues, and also trying to calculate future use and growth. One of the concerns I have, I fully support this project. I think it's needed for the town hall and the schools in particular. One of my concerns is that this could actually spur more growth through this area of town. In that being, did you kind of take that into consideration in that when you put in a sewer, that it could, in a town like this with the, with the amount of land that's open, did you take into calculations of some sort of capacity growth based on that? And it sounds like within the center of town, will be fine, but anything below that point, below this hill over here, down to Boston Road, there's plenty of open land.
Right.
Did you take into some thought of capacity growth? I know you can only take it so far,
Right.
but was there any consideration for that at all?
Yeah, the charge was really to focus on the center of town and then, along Boston Road. So, the limits of the scope of work that we were given really didn't factor going down Singletary towards, really it wasn't even to go further along Boston Road other than to factor in the possible connection of the school. So the scope creep, stuff like that, it can be never ending. So
No, I
it's-
understand
it's-
that, but, yeah.
It's something that, we worked on the outset to really define that with
Yeah.
the commissioners to determine where and when this stuff would be connected to.
Mhm.
Chairman, can I just touch up on that question? Mr. Hans, that was a very good question that you answered there, and that was a consideration that the sewer commissioners took when they were reviewing the options. Their main concern was the town hall and the school, and when the other two options came on property that wasn't owned by the town of Sutton, they decided that the message they want to send, that we're gonna focus on what we own and take care of our needs. So that was a consideration by the commissioners in regards to that.
Thank you.
Nick, you had a question in the back? You can just identify yourself. Why don't you come up to the mic?
Robert Nunnemacher, 24 Singletary Ave. I've gone to the sewer commissioners' meetings for, I don't know, a year or something, and watched them talk about this and their concerns about it. I don't think there's any question that there is an absolute need to run the sewer up to the town hall to take care of something that should have been done many years ago, and in the future to be able to take care of the school. But I think it's right that the concerns of other people, that you get down to the school, you've got perhaps a mile up Boston Road, a mile on further on Putnam Hill Road that could be easily connected into this system. I'm also a strong believer of having more than enough money to do any kind of project and not to shortchange any kind of project that you're involved with. So it seems to me tonight there's kind of a rush to judgment here, and I know that people are eager to get this thing going. But I think a delay until the fall town meeting is appropriate and would give adequate time to answer all these questions that you various people have brought up. And everybody would be more confident of what they're getting and what it would cost in the fall. Thank you.
I'm the chairman of this board, and I've lived on Singletary Ave for 68 years, and all my employment has been right here in the center of town. And I lived with the poor sewer designs and everything else that we've had, how the town hall has failed. Singletary Ave, they got a tenement house there, that's pumped out all the time. The pump truck is here maybe once every 2 weeks or so, all the time. And our main goal was to focus on this Sutton Center area, village area, and then at some time, the next phase of this, in good faith, was to get out to the school, because that system is failing within 3 to 5 years. We're gonna have to need something there, and that's the main goal of that, but we had to get this phase done first. But what I'm a little disappointed in is, I think that we all have to be fair to the taxpayers, and I don't think that we have the right numbers right now, and I wanna make sure that us as Board of Selectmen members, we're presenting the right thing, because I don't think it's fair to anyone else. So if we postpone it to the fall, if that's an option, I want to be clear to everybody, the Springtown meeting, you have a big volume of people, and that's mainly the most important meeting of the town, and then we do other things in the fall. We're not just putting this off in the fall so that we can get the votes to do it. That's not the principle of any of this. We gotta be concrete on what we have and what design, and I think has to be some more professional conversation at the table to get all this done correctly.
You know, I'm personally responsible for bringing this to the board, and I thought that some of these issues had been resolved and we were just presenting the final project to you. I don't feel like we're at that point. There's a number of questions that have come in my mind and I want answers to, and I think, you know, I don't see a way that we move forward at Maytown meeting with this article at this point in time. That's just my recommendation, and you know, I apologize for presenting it. I should have done some more work on it, but you know, I do think it's better to wait and get the exact numbers and exactly what we need, and let's get it right once.
And if I may add, Carl, you've been around a long time. Nikki and Hosh, you've been here for quite some time. When we did the sewer project down in Manchog, that whole village area was failing many, many years. And the town, not just Manchog, the town stepped up to the plate, and we did a sewer project down there, and it was on everyone's taxes and everything. But we've made every one of those houses, including the mills, all the property that we have there, and the property that we've leased out and everything, it's a much better place than it ever could be. And the people down there are very happy with what has been done down there. And I want to see the same type of thing here, but we got to make sure that we're following the right criteria.
Yeah, I agree, if I may, Mr. Chairman. I think if we get the numbers correctly, we get the design perfect, I think, as you said, I think the whole town will respond positively. And it would be hard to advocate against not taking care of not just town hall, not just the residents on the road, but the schools as well. You know, I can't imagine any type of resistance to that. So again, I would agree with that. We should just postpone it, make sure we're right, and then move forward.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to just say that, you know, this is obviously, it's not on Mr. Smith, it's actually on us. We had obviously a complete misunderstanding of the various options and phases that the town was looking for. And initially, we had looked at possible gravity everywhere. We've presented 5 different options to the commission. The directive was essentially to, you know, focus on gravity at the center of town. And at that point, obviously on our end, we lost in the communication the part about continuing or making sure that low pressure was factored all the way down Boston Road. I will tell you that we did do a preliminary design and cost takeoff for low pressure along Boston Road, including the required cleanouts, air release manholes. So that $500,000 that we're talking about is not a number that is, you know, from an engineering estimate perspective, it's not going to change. We did do the work behind that. It just wasn't put into this presentation. And again, that's on us. It's not on Mr. Smith. You know, it certainly is something that he communicated, and we lost it in translation somewhere. So I want to make clear about that, you know, this is certainly not something that anyone in town, you know, that this is on our end. But that $3.6 million that I just mentioned, you know, if we had come in and opened this up and had that shown on there, that would be the number. So we're confident with that number, it's an accurate number, and that's what we would have recommended be presented tonight and as well as town meeting, understanding that the intent was always to pick up residents along Boston Road, so.
Well, you know, from my perspective, thank you for that. And, you know, I will say this, nothing in this conversation makes me less confident in the work that's been done. I think there's just a communication issue around what the goals are and how those goals will be met. And so I think, you know, as we've heard, and I would agree with, I think stepping back a little bit and taking the time to be clear about that so that when we come forward next, we have complete congruence around what we're trying to achieve and how we're going to achieve it, so that we can bring one clear project goal to the town is the right thing to do.
Understood.
But I guess my question, Jim, would be if we're going to vote on a warrant tonight.
Working on that.
Do we just vote on the warrant as it is and then
No,
pull it at town meeting?
you
or-
motion to approve the warrant, excluding
Article 18.
Article 18. And then,
You just had to do that on my motion, thanks.
yeah, I'm sorry about that. What about the election? It's a ballot question on the election.
Yeah, because it's an override.
So that's another step, is because it is a debt exclusion override, there is a ballot question which the board needs to sign that tonight for the May election.
Yeah.
So same thing, just
So, you
eliminate
know,
question one for now.
Deb is talking to Laura while we're considering this, so.
Why don't we just move
So
on?
we can, you know,
Luckily,
have the
that
rest of this
comes up.
presentation or whatever, and then when that comes up, hopefully we'll have an answer at that point in time.
So there's certainly left to talk about.
Your meeting.
So, what you wanna do now, excuse these guys for now, or if we get enough information, we wanna come back to them tonight and go on to something else till you get some information?
I mean, that's really the board's decision, but, you know, I don't, if the board is
Okay.
not feeling confident about Maytown meeting and wants to exclude this article, then I don't know that it benefits us to go through this presentation further. Maybe we have them come back
Yeah, so
in
additionally.
June or July and get all this straightened out well before fall town meeting.
I would like to have someone, do that so we can
Okay, and
take a
then
vote
take
on
this
that,
out and add
if
it at
that's
the
the
end.
way you wanna go.
Do we need to take a motion to have them come back?
I think we just pick it up when we vote the
Yeah,
articles.
could we not
specific
continue it?
articles.
On the warrant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be part of the motion.
Yep.
Wendy's reviewing the motion with Deb,
Right.
and it'll exclude Article 18.
And to say in
Okay.
there that it'll come up again in the fall?
We'll bring it up again in the fall.
Okay.
Again, I apologize.
So I think from your perspective is really just whether there's anything to add to the presentation or whether we're kind of all set.
No, I think we're all set on our end.
Okay.
And you gentlemen are pretty darn concrete and positive with that $500,000 added figure to go from 3.1 to 3.6.
Yes.
And that would accommodate everything that we need here.
Correct.
And we've got the language to approve the election warrant excluding question one,
Okay.
so.
Great.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
David and Ray, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So Jim, do we leave agenda number 6 where it is and when we get to it, or do you want?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
All righty, thank you.
Thanks.
So just move on to the next one now?
Sure.
Next on the agenda is request to increase capital stabilization fund by 2.5%. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do this on an annual basis. We've done this for the last 11 straight years. This would allow the town to increase the 2019 override figure of $623,241 to FY 20's number of $638,822. The goal of this fund was, as the board is well aware, is to establish a resource for capital purchases. Once the Shaw Farm decreases, the amount available for capital increases. So our goal, we're actually going to use the capital stabilization fund this year. It's going to pay the debt service on 3 purchases. The new highway vehicle, Truck 12, that's being replaced, a new piece of fire apparatus for engine, the Wilkinsonville station, and we will also use the debt service to fund repairs on Central Turnpike. So it is a good year for that fund. It will get used. It'll bring the balance down to like approximately $200,000 in that account. And then it'll grow going forward. So I'm asking for a motion on that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, just a couple questions.
Sure.
The 2.5% override, 2.5% increase is the normal debt limit override, and it's a technicality that we have to pass this every year, is that?
Yeah, it is, because without it, then it wouldn't grow by 2.5%. And, you know, the bottom line and the theory behind this is it essentially keeps up with inflation. The cost of services, the cost of these fire apparatuses, for instance. We bought engine 2 down in Manchog 4 years ago, and that was $750,000. Now we're budgeting $825,000 for engine 3 down in Wilkes. That's the cost of those engines increase, and to have that fund increase by 2.5% allows us to keep up with inflation and afford articles at a higher cost.
Yep. Yeah, and you know, we do this from time to time, but I think it's just worth taking the opportunity to talk about it. You know, this capital stabilization plan, as we talk about when we have the chance, it was well designed, so as the debt service on the Shaw property goes down, as you just said, the amount of money allocated every year actually has an opportunity to increase into the capital stabilization fund. But the 2.5% override is equally important to this fund. You know, the benefit to the taxpayers of this fund, you know, the genesis of this idea goes way back at a time when the town's budget was struggling to keep up with all of its obligations. And without a fund like this, we were essentially paying for capital projects either through debt exclusions or taking money that was otherwise available to, you know, to ongoing
Operations.
operations of the town budget. So one thing that's been evident to me, particularly in this year when we're looking at funding roadways out of this fund, is that what we may have envisioned 5 years ago or longer as ways to use this fund morphs with the times, you know, as requirements change and needs arise. We're using the fund maybe in ways that we didn't anticipate. So continuing to fund this with these kind of growth elements and maybe even free cash at times,
Yeah.
I think is really wise for the town, because it just allows us to continue to invest and essentially save operational money for the right purposes. So I just want an opportunity to, I lost the under bet anyway, so I'm just going on.
That's
Couldn't
why I
agree
put my
more.
money on the over.
Jesse?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I really don't have any questions. I support this move, and in terms of actual dollars, a 2.5% increase of our fund is a ballpark figure about $15,000. Considering the amount of interest that we would have had to pay in years past if we would have had to constantly do debt exclusions to replace these apparatus. You know, that's the key thing. We're not adding to our fleet. We are replacing these devices that our departments rely upon and our residents rely upon. So to me, 2.5, it's a scary number, but when you actually look at dollars and cents, we're saving money over the long term. So, you know, whenever we bring up the capital stabilization fund, I always give kudos to the Board of Selectmen at the time and those who were involved that had the foresight to put this in operation, because we are not only seeing the benefit of today, but, you know, future boards and future residents will continue to see the benefit as this continues to grow.
Exactly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No need to repeat what's already been said. It's obviously an inherent part of our budget, and I support it 100%.
Jonathan?
The same here, agree with everything that's been said.
Yeah, I think it's a plus, and it's a real break for the taxpayers, you know, we've seen that, other than taking a lot of this stuff out of operational budgets, and that's what was done years ago with police cruisers and everything, right, Jim?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the way to go.
And the school department often cut their budget, or took operating revenues that were to go to buying textbooks and other things to buy capital items, and that just didn't.
It just doesn't make, this is the correct way to go and the only way. So, we have a motion on the floor.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I make a motion to authorize the Assessor's Office to increase the Capital Stabilization Fund by an additional 2.5% increase to the FY 2019 override figure of $623,241 to $638,822.
I'll second that.
Motion been made and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next would be dedication of training room at the new police station. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Police Station Building Committee, of which Selectman Wendy Mead chairs, is recommending that the Board of Selectmen name the training room on behalf of the former police chief and our current chairman, John L. Hebert. As the board is aware, John Hebert has served the town for over 50 years, a long time. His service started as an employee to the Highway Department and went on to serve the Police Department for 35 years, including 11 as chief of police. I don't know how you did 11 years as chief. That's just unbelievable. The police committee, the police station building committee feels this is an appropriate honor for John Hebert and his outstanding years of service to the town of Sutton. So I open it to the board for comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I'm gonna hold my comment. Dave?
So we recognize that you're not particularly comfortable with this thing, but that being said, I think it's interesting how timing works out sometimes, and this is particularly fortuitous timing. You know, John, you've announced that you're retiring from this board, and 50-plus years of public service and dedication to the town has been well documented. But to have this project come on at this time, and particularly this project being the police station building and all of your service to the police department, I think this is just a great sort of send-off, if you will, and certainly well-deserved. So, Wendy, thank you to your team for putting this forward, and Jim, you as well. And you know, John, this will be a great dedication to you that will be here for decades to come. So congratulations, and it's well earned.
Jesse?
John, thank you.
Let's get this over with. Jesse?
Well, I you know me, I'm never short with words, and I'll be as brief as I can. I think this decision is definitely appropriate, and I'm going to speak in a personal sense, because ever since I've been lucky enough to become a member of this board, you've always been looking out for me. You've always been looking over my shoulder. So this room that is going to be named after you is the training room. So there are going to be lessons that are going to be taught and passed down to future officers. Other departments are going to be able to engage in trainings there, all with your shadow always lingering, being there as a mentor, as a guide on how to do things the Sutton way. So yeah, I'm just going to leave it at that. I think it's appropriate. I think it's fitting. And of course, I fully support this, my friend.
Wendy?
Just ever so briefly, It's amazing that in a town of this size, the secret was kept this long. And I think that says something about the integrity of the people who want this for you and recognize that you deserve it. So thank you for your service.
I didn't wear a short sleeve shirt to show all the goosebumps. And Jonathan,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree as well. I think it's something we should definitely honor you with, and the amount of years of service that you've provided this town and the impacts that you've had both on the police department and here in the Board of Selectmen for so many years. It's a small thing, but it's really big because it'll be there forever. So I'm really grateful that we're doing this.
well, as Jim knows, and he can cover me on this, I generally don't put myself ahead of anyone else, and I'm not gonna boast, but I just want to give a little bit of history, if I may, for just a couple of minutes. In the late 60s, the police department was pretty much established by a full-time staff. We had troubles down in Manchog. At one time, we had 5 bar rooms in Sutton, and the people used to come in from the other towns late at night and everything, and cause a ruckus. So they had a Manchog patrol, and that was done by some of the Ray Bassett and the Conleys and Mr. Alger and a whole bunch of them down that area. And the town thought we needed a police chief, and they hired Edward F. LaCrosse as our first police chief. He ran the gas station over here. And our first cruisers were the Plymouth station wagons with a stretcher, an oxygen bottle, a little first aid kit, and maybe someone that knew a little bit of training, some CPR, and our main goal was to get them in that ambulance and get them up to the hospital as soon as we could so they would get the proper care, We even put studded snow tires on all 4 tires so that to make sure that these cruisers would make it there. And we did that for quite a few years. And then, if I may, I worked for him. He appointed me to the police department on my birthday, September 25th, 1971. And that's a funny little day for me because I was working for Ray Smith at the highway barn, and a very good boss. And I was mad as a wet hen because I had to go to work that day, but they all come down at noontime and had a birthday cake and my badge. So I got home as fast as I could. I dropped everything from that truck I was fixing and got home. Well, little did I know, 2 hours later, I made my first arrest. I caught a housebreaker, and I chased him all the way down to Purgatory. And that was my first arrest at Central Turnpike and Oxbridge Road at the old Missouri House. And so that was quite a story for quite some time. But I stayed here. I learned an awful lot. We knocked down the old town hall here. And before then, the cruisers used to go home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they'd be parked at the tenement house that's failing with sewer. That's where Eddie LaCrosse lived. And at 2 o'clock, after the bar rooms closed, and then on call basis, they'd call someone at home and go get the cruiser and go out and stuff. But be honestly, I kind of lived for the police department. I had a love for it, and I guess I'd say early on it was in my blood. And then I went on from there, and we had the old town hall, and then 1983, we were into this building, but before here, the generosity of Bob LeClaire at Benjamin Insurance, we were in the cellar of his insurance building there for a long time while this place was getting constructed. And this was supposed to be the police station that was, everyone said, wow, it's gonna be built out for 20 years. Well, look at the time from 1983 to 9. Count up those years. It's 30 plus years. And so a rewarding police station. I haven't been in it very much, but I've already nicknamed it It's not the John Hebert Training Center or anything else. It's Little Alcatraz, you know? And, I think that's, and that's fitting for it. But Wendy, I just can't say enough about you. When you were the building committee for the school and now for the police station, and the wisdom of you and the support of Jim Smith and Chief Toll, along with all these selectmen here and everything, I don't think I've had a prouder moment. And it's not that I want to talk about myself, but it's a great thing. And I will accept that plaque on that wall down there. I haven't seen it, haven't been there, and this is quite a surprise to me. And but I will go there, and yeah, I'm proud to have it there, and it means an awful lot to me and to my family. And it's something that in years to come, you know, my children and everyone else can think about and everything. So I do have a speech for when we do the opening and everything. And I'm just gonna kind of cut this short here right now. But I had a good life. I left the police department. I started in 1971, and I get done in 2006, where I come up to the top, and 11 years as chief, and things were a little bit easier then. The society was a little bit different, but we had a different type of a thing that we dealt with quite a bit, and it was still, like I tell Dennis and I've told Jim, and Jim knows, even him in his position, everyone says, wow, you're on vacation, you know, had a house at the Cape and everything else. Yeah, I did. And Jim goes away and everything, but you're always waiting for that one phone call. Is there gonna be an accident? Is a policeman gonna get shot? Or the thing I probably wouldn't say on TV and camera here, are they all employing something to get rid of me? You know, those thoughts always went through your mind and everything. But I made it through all of that stuff, and I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And there's all things that we think about. So we were never really on vacation, you know, and people thought we were, but we always thought of something, you know. And I'll just go on one little story. Today, Jim told me when I was away last week, as you can recall, we had a murder in 1999 of down at the Extra Mart, and there were 5 people involved. And at that time, within 9 days, the Sutton Police Department, with the great work of the District Attorney's Office and the State Police detective staff, we made 5 arrests for murder. And I've been to some of the parole hearings the last couple of times at the parole board, and that's quite an experience to be up there before 9 of them. And myself, Dennis our chief, was one of the first ones there with, I believe, I think it was Kevin Richards, and pulled the person who passed away outside to get him some air. Didn't know he was shot at that time, and he bled to death within 5 minutes from a bullet hole that severed his aorta, you know. But I've been to the parole hearings, and like I told all of them, when I go by the Extra Mart today, it's not the Extra Mart. It's where Jim McCormick got murdered. And Dennis and I think about that every day that we go by there. I mean, that's what's kind of on our mind. So there's things in the police department that are still instilled with you, and you're never gonna forget a lot of that type of stuff. But they haven't let him out, and they denied his parole, so he's still in. And to me and Dennis and all the hard work and just respect for the family, that's a good thing. You know, that's the police end of everything. So I will be quiet for now, and I guess I could talk all night on certain things because I love the aspect of police. And, but anyway, again, to all of you and Dennis, who's not here and everything, thank you very much, and I'm very touched.
Thank you for your service.
Next would be
Motion on the floor.
Mr. Chairman.
Don't
Nice
skip the
try.
motion.
Yeah,
Nice
yeah,
try.
that was
Boy, oh,
slick there. That was slick.
Okay,
I know. Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it would be my honor to make a motion to name the training room at the new police station after John L. Hebert for his years of service to the town of Sutton.
Second.
And motion is made in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Should I say aye too, Jim?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Aye,
Absolutely.
5-0. That's a great thing. All right, as we move on now, finally, to Special Municipal Employee Board of Health Engineer, Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight, I'm requesting that the board appoint Margaret Bacon as a special municipal employee under Mass General Law, Chapter 268A. I have offered a position to Ms. Bacon, and she has requested a special municipal employee status. Ms. Bacon is a PE and owns a company, Civil Site Engineering LLC, has served clients in Worcester County for the last 20 years. Ms. Bacon would like the status for the rare situations that she may represent clients before other boards in the town of Sutton, but she is well aware, as we are, that she cannot represent clients before the Board of Health, only before the Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and other boards in town. Cheryl Owinski has been very important to this process. She worked with 5 other towns to interview a number of companies and individuals interested in filling the role that Jim Malley filled for the Board of Health for many years. Obviously, we lost Jim Malley a couple months ago, but Ms. Bacon, I've met her a number of times, and she seems more than qualified to fill this role. So I'm asking that the board, and I have a letter attached from Tom McEnany, Town Council, declare her a special municipal employee status. Thank you.
And Jim, just the nature of the job itself is like technical consulting almost, is that?
Yeah, I mean, there's pretty much reviewing plans, going out and observing Title V,
The perk test.
perk tests. Jim Malley I used to be out there with Jim doing perk tests in different sites that I was interested in. But that's essentially what this individual does. They review plans, individuals submit septic plans to the town. Jim and now Margaret review those plans, make sure they're up to code, and they sign off on those plans as a PE.
So it's part-time work as needed based on the.
Yeah, she's gonna serve not only the town of Sutton, but other surrounding towns in this role. But we have to declare it in this status
Yeah.
simply for our town.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I wanted to make clear for the public, is that this special municipal employee designation is just a requirement of the conflict of interest laws.
That's right.
Which I guess just recognizes the fact that she could, it declares in advance that she may be appearing before other boards, and,
Exactly.
we all know that, so. Other than that, I have no questions or concerns. I think, sounds like the homework that's been done is great, and so I would support it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Jesse?
I really see no issue. I'm assuming that Cheryl has endorsed Miss or Mrs. Bacon's candidacy.
Ms. Bacon, yes.
Yep, then to me, if Cheryl's on board, I'm on board. I'm confident with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Wendy?
I echo Jesse's comments. I have complete confidence in her recommendation.
Yeah, same here. I'm fine with the appointment.
Yeah, I'm very confident with Cheryl, and, I'm very confident to have this motion go forward. And we have a motion on the floor?
Mr. Chairman, I move to designate the position of the Board of Health Consulting Engineer, Margaret Bacon, as a special municipal employee.
I'll second that.
Motion been made second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Next would be approval of the May town meeting warrant, election warrant. Jim?
Okay. How do you want to proceed with this? Do you want me to read through all the items? I can group them into sections, but, we did the draft presentation. Nothing has changed from that point. The only things that have changed is that the the citizens petition that was submitted by Susan Rothmick, that'll be passed over at Maytown meeting. So the planning board didn't consider it in their public hearing process. The other issue is we had an article on the warrant, the draft warrant, to pay prior year's bills, bad bills, so-called. But there are no bad bills that we are aware of at this point in time, so we just took that article out. That was a placeholder. So that's the only changes in the warrant. And obviously now we are excluding Article 18, which is the sewer article. And we'll do the same on the election warrant as well. Thank you.
Well, I'll leave it up to my other colleagues here, but I'm quite confident and comfortable that we've already been through a lot of this stuff, and we know what Jim just said tonight here. I just as soon just move on, and I think it's okay with me if it's okay with everybody else.
I just have one question, if I may,
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Chairman.
got some specific questions, but
Yeah.
I don't need to go through everything.
I just have a quick one, because you had mentioned that the citizen petition had been withdrawn. Would that be Article 30 or 29 or both?
Yeah, it would be,
Yeah, she had two.
Yeah.
yeah, both would be
So
withdrawn.
both withdrawn? All right. That's
So,
all, there's no
I
question.
have a related question. So we're gonna vote this warrant that has those in there.
Yes.
But, you know, we don't have a planning board vote, and I assume at the public hearing for the Finance and Warrant Committee that they won't address this article either.
They won't.
So if, I mean, it's here, we're counting on the citizen to pass over the article. If they try to pursue it, I mean, would that sort of like obviate the thing because the proper procedures haven't been followed?
Yes, I think it was just a timing issue with the town clerk. Once you submit a citizen's petition and you meet the deadline, it is official part of the warrant.
Yeah.
And it can only be withdrawn by the petitioner the night of town meeting.
Yep.
Planning board hasn't considered it, the finance committee won't consider it. If, I don't believe,
I'm not suggesting she's gonna do that. I'm
any
just-
individual with notifying the town that they have no interest in pursuing it at this point in time.
Yeah.
If they tried to pursue it at May town meeting, any individual would probably get significant rebuttal
Yeah.
from various boards and commissions that didn't have a chance to adequately review that or interview.
Starting with this one, I would think.
That would,
And because it's a zoning change, it would be a 2/3 majority anyway, so, yeah.
it's a good question. Unfortunately, once the petition is approved by the deadline and it's part of the, nothing we can do but
Yep.
keep it on the warrant.
Okay. Motion.
I'm all set.
I'm all set if you're prepared for a motion.
Sure.
I would like to make a motion to approve and sign the May 2018 town meeting warrant excluding Article 18 and the election warrant excluding question number 1.
I'll second that.
Motion made second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0. Okay, next would be the town manager's update. Jim?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A few updates for the board's consideration. We had a meeting with the CMRPC on Thursday, April 4th. It was with the CMRPC staff and John Hebert regarding road conditions in the town of Sutton. We discussed the Transportation Improvement Program and the roads that are eligible for this program. After the meeting, we toured some of the roads in the town that would be eligible for this program. Obviously, John Hebert, who was the Sub-East Regional member of the CMRPC, et cetera, put together this meeting. Obviously, Jen Hager and Matt Stencil participated in as well. Matt Stencil plays a role in CMRPC, a technical role, and this was very valuable to drive through the town. You know, obviously, Matt had repaired many of the potholes, so it was difficult to tour it, although the chairman did hit a couple of potholes on the way. What we're really focusing on now is we do have funds for Central Turnpike, hopefully, if town meeting approves. We are looking at other roads in town that are eligible for the TIP program. It's usually a lengthy process, typically about 5 years, but we are looking right now predominantly at Boston Road, about where Galaxy Development stopped, heading out to the end of Boston Road, 122A, Providence Turnpike, out to the Millbury line. So underneath the bridge and so forth. So that's a big project, and that would be TIP eligible, and we're going to pursue that route for the next couple of years. Veterans Agent amended contract. The members of the coalition, the four-town group, Sutton, Douglas, Northbridge, and Uxbridge, met to discuss adding the town of Blackstone to our four-town group, so it would now be 5 towns. The Veterans Agent, Carl Bradshaw, felt him and his full-time assistant could easily handle the additional work. That contract has Northbridge and Uxbridge paying 33, Sutton and Douglas pay 17% each. With the addition of Blackstone, the costs, well, if you add Blackstone, our cost percentage goes down to 14%. Uxbridge and Northbridge go down to 29% from 33. Adding Anne Marie's salary going full-time, that was a $3,000 increase in our budget. If you add Blackstone, it's only $258. So it is a cost savings over, we anticipated a $3,000 increase. If this all happens and works out, it would be a $258 increase for the town of Sutton. So essentially saving, almost $2,700. It appears that the Veterans, the Department of Veterans Services, head of Department of Veterans Services has signed off on this and has approved it. So it's just a matter of paperwork and going through the process in each individual town. At some point, I will have a revised IMA before the Board of Selectmen for signature, and you guys can review that document. But adding the town of Blackstone makes sense. We get an additional full-time employee, and our cost pretty much remains the same as it was before. Animal Inspector Ed Mansfield has retired from the town, being the animal inspector for the town of Sutton. Ed's recommendation was Brenda Couture, from Northbridge, Mass. We hired her as a new animal inspector. Brenda has extensive experience with horses and other livestock. I would like to thank Ed Mansfield for his years of service to the town of Sutton. He's really stepped up and provide great leadership in that role, and we greatly appreciate it. Brush Chipping Day, the Highway Department will hold a brush chipping day on Saturday, May 11th from 8 a.m. to 12 noon at the transfer station. Anyone that has a transfer station sticker can bring their brush. Again, the finance warrant committees are Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Is that next week? Yeah. So it's coming up soon. And that's going to take place. The one item I'd like to talk about is the police station grand opening. It's originally scheduled for May 4th at 10 a.m. We had a meeting there last week with the general contractor, and Dennis and Wendy were there, and discussed that. And right now, and Dennis really wants to be in the station for a couple of weeks to work out some of the kinks and make sure everybody knows what's going on before we invite the public in to do a open house. In addition, the landscaping, it's just been a very wet spring, and you just can't plant at this point in the year. So holding off another month will help that situation, hopefully, because we'd really like to have the landscaping done, and in the officers, we could probably get it open and ready, but Dennis just doesn't feel comfortable with that time frame, and there's really no rush to get in there. We've taken care of all the additional costs for the OPM and so forth, so I don't see a huge issue with delaying it, and what we're looking at is some point the first or second week in June. So it's about a 30-day, but it does give us some breathing room at this point in time to, and obviously Wendy and I have talked about this extensively, and we feel it's the right decision at this point in time to extend the opening for another month. That's all I have for updates, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jim, thank you for the update. The paving through CMR RPC is, I guess, really welcome to hear about. Sounds like it's a long-term sort of project, but we know that in the past, efforts to make that group aware of some of the issues in town have resulted in some pretty significant amounts of pavement, paving.
And bridge repair.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we appreciate that. And So, John, one last good deed through the CMRPC to help us out. We appreciate that. And, it's a great group, and I'm sure that will reap some benefits in the future. So, going back a few weeks, I really enjoyed having our veterans agent here. I think it was really eye-opening and enlightening. It's a little unfortunate that maybe this wasn't something we could have discussed at that time, just a little bit of bad timing. But, at that time, we talked about bringing on the part-time person to make her full-time, and that was going to bring some benefits, we thought, directly to us. It was going to be an opportunity for them as a group to spend a little more time at the senior center. So I guess the only thing I worry about, I like to save money where I can. I just want to be sure that we're not diluting their resources to any kind of degree to where we don't get some of those benefits that we hope to get.
I think he got our message loud and clear. He sent me an email, I think it was probably today. I get so many emails, it's hard to recall, but I think it was earlier today, working out the whole calculation of everybody else. And his email said, and I look forward to, coming to the Sutton Senior Center in next month. So he got our message that the board sent loud and clear.
Good. I mean, I'm not really questioning the decision. I'm sure it is a good thing. Certainly the opportunity to extend benefits to every veteran, wherever they are, is what's appropriate.
Yeah.
But I guess I had been looking forward to the additional services here, and I want to make sure that continues.
Yeah.
With you, thanks to Ed for all his work, and welcome to Brenda. Looking forward to that. And, jumping forward to the grand opening, I guess you said what I was feeling was I don't feel like there's a particular rush to do it at any certain time. So if there's good considered reasons why you have decided to push it out, I fully support that, and I'm sure it'll be great. So
Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Jesse?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll start off with John. Once again, always looking out for Sutton. Thank you, my friend, appreciate it. And I'm definitely gonna be a beneficiary, because if CMRPC comes through with paving Boston Road, and Providence Turnpike, Providence Road.
Yeah.
If any of you have been down in that corner of town, the road is taking a tremendous beating. And part of the reason why it's taking a tremendous beating is, again, we have John to thank due to his efforts in bringing about the 146 interchange, which allows the residents in abutting communities easier access to the Mass Pike.
Yeah.
So I've been living down in Wilkes for 24 odd years, and in my time there, traffic has increased and the roads are literally coming apart. So having this to look forward to down the road, thank you, sir. Well done. And I'm sure all the residents in Wilkes will be appreciative. Thank you for the update about Carl. I'm going to echo Dave's sentiments. I thought his presentation was wonderful. It was excellent, and I've received nothing but positive feedback, not only from some of the people that were in attendance, but people who have tuned in since. Again, I think his willingness and his desire to serve those who are entitled to those benefits rang sincere and true. So anything that we can do to aid his efforts, he's going to take a little time away from us maybe, but if this is still going to allow him to still, come down, and if, as you said, he's already booked an appointment down at the senior center, I'm sure there's going to be a lot of happy people down there as well. So next time you talk to Carl, thank him.
Will do.
From us. Thank you to Ed, and welcome Brenda. With the brush chipping, I'm sure Pam or Christine will do it, but just make sure someone posts it on the Sutton site, because I think the chipping question has already come up once or twice.
Okay.
And on the police station, I think it's the right decision. I was fortunate enough to attend the last police station building committee meeting that we had in the station, and we got a nice tour. And I just want to reassure the residents, we're not saying that the station is falling apart. It's just close. There's just little things. Some of the trim needs to be painted. There needs to be touch-up. So giving the contractors a little breathing room to get the job done right, so that way when the department moves in, they don't feel rushed. I think it's the right decision. Because again, I was on the school committee when The issue of moving into the middle school was kind of forced by the mold issue in the old building, and there was a lot of chaos, and there was a lot of confusion. And I'm always still having in the back of my head, were there things that were missed because we had to force the issue? But at least allowing the police department to sit back, make sure that the station is done properly, to meet the approval of the community, I think it's the right decision. So whoever was involved, Wendy, Jim, Chief, thank you for making the proper decision. And that's all I have.
Wendy?
Thank you. Just a couple of quick comments. Thank you for your work with CMRPC, which I always think is RCMP in Canada. I get so confused. But thank you. Your oversight has been tremendously appreciated. And I just wanted to echo one of your comments, Jim, about the additional cost for the OPM. The project is still under budget. I just
Right.
want to be clear that the additional costs do not mean we're looking for more money from the
No.
town. The project is still under budget. So I just wanted to clarify that. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, Jim, for your update.
Sure.
Yeah, again, on the CMRPC, I think it's just another great source for us to tap into to get the roads fixed. As we know, there's a lot of concern this spring,
Mhm.
and we need to be looking at as many possible ways to fund, getting our roads, keeping them maintained anyway.
Yeah.
And we're always taking on new roads from time to time as well, so it's not like we're always growing in amount of
Right.
roads going on. So I absolutely support that. Like Dave, I do have some just concern about spreading, Carl a little bit out too much. I know they're adding on from part-time to full-time person, but I do, one thing that caught my eye, or my ear anyway, when he was talking about when he moved to Uxbridge, from Uxbridge to Northbridge, there was a significant drop-off, in people requesting service from Uxbridge. So, I'm just concerned with him now having another town that, he's gonna be spread too thin across the 5 towns, and it's just something to keep an eye on. But it's short money to save, so I'm not really concerned about the money savings, just making sure we get the services to the veterans and that they feel they have adequate avenues to approach him with. So that's just something that's on my mind about that.
Okay.
I'd like to thank Ed Mansfield for his years of service, and I welcome Brenda onto the, as the animal inspector. And, as far as the police station goes, grand opening, always kind of when you get to the end of any project, there's always a little touch-up that has to go on. It's just when you move into a house, same thing. And you just have to get all that work done, and I think it just makes sense, so I'm fine with it.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Jonathan. Jim, thanks for your update, and I think everything's been covered. Next would be announcements, Selectmen Roundtable, and correspondence. We can put them all into one if you'd like. Dave?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one thing, we just mentioned it a second ago in the update, but, for the public, I just want to remind everybody that Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of next week are the Finance Committee public hearings on the warrant. And it's your opportunity as a member of the public to come and ask questions and voice your opinions about anything that's on the warrant. And it, other than town meeting itself, it's your only opportunity to do that. And so I invite everybody to come to the meeting if you can, or certainly watch it on the videos. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I only have food pantry list, and it's extensive, but also keep in mind that we have Easter coming up, so if anyone has the opportunity or desire to contribute to the food pantry, just get those donations down to the senior center. I think Thursday, I'm not sure, are they open Friday? Good Friday?
Good question.
Yeah, I don't know. So we'll just put the tentative deadline as Thursday. All right, here's the list. Pop-Tarts, Spam, canned ham, canned chicken, canned spinach, canned beets, flour, sugar, juices, of course low sugar if possible, pudding mixes, brownie mixes, plain Quaker oats, shampoos, laundry detergent, dish soap, feminine products, cleaning supplies, tissues, and sponges. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Jesse. Wendy?
I have nothing this evening, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Welcome. Jonathan?
Nothing for me either.
And I don't either. Ask for an adjournment?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you, gentlemen.